Recognized for his fine art paintings of still life and detailed and realistic portraits of women, Lung Jun endows his works with vitality and richness of colour. His paintings have been sold regularly at auctions throughout China and have been acquired for collections worldwide. His work is the result of careful observation and meticulous practice. Getting really close to his subjects, Lun convincingly depicts the details using his highly sophisticated technique. However, his paintings are often misunderstood as high-tech products. Some even argue that they are too much like photography.
虽然很多人说哇像照片像照片，其实看了原作的人都知道，它肯定是超越照片的。
Although many people say that they are like photos, people who have seen the original work know that it is definitely beyond a photo. It is impossible to be like a photo. If it is like a photo, it doesn't make sense because it has no irreplaceable place. The value of the existence of anything lies in its irreplaceability.
Born in 1963 in Sichuan province, Lun always had a passion for painting. On entering college, Lung began to learn oil painting, but years before that, he'd already had a chance to give it a try.
第一张油画那是
My first oil painting was in the first or second grade of middle school. At that time, no pigments were available. A friend gave me two, a red one and a yellow one, but there was no white pigment. I said it won't work without white pigment. So he gave me a self-made one. It was very rough, and I just made it up myself and painted a child. That was my first oil painting.
After the reform and opening up policy in 1978, China saw a boom in its cultural market to make up for what had been lost in the past decades. Lung's studenthood married up with this important time period.
像我们60年代生人呐，这个时候正好是10几岁的时候，正是世界观形成的时候，那是个。
For people like me who were born around the 1960s, we were teenagers at the time when we formed our worldview. That was a great opportunity. Looking back, reform and opening up really saved the soul of our generation. At that time, things from the West were introduced, especially when I graduated from college. My biggest job back then was go to Xinhua bookstore to order books. At that time, there was a tabloid in the bookstore showing the books that were going to be published that week. And it took 5 cents to order a book. There were so many people who ordered books at that time. Unlike now, there are more books now. Books are everywhere, but there were very few books back then. At the time, information coming from the West made a great contribution to the enlightenment of our people. It also laid a very solid foundation for my later creations.
奠定了那个可以说是非常坚实的基础。
In 1985, New Wave art movement had an extraordinary impact on China's art. As a young man who had just graduated from college, Lun first spent some time focusing on modern and expressionist painting. His turn to realistic painting was quite random. He was asked to be a judge at an art festival where each judge needed to provide a realistic work.
我那天就在屋里摆了一组静物，一个下午就把它画完了。
I had a set of still lifes in the house that day and finished painting them one afternoon. I didn't think the outcome was bad and felt encouraged. So I changed to another set of still lifes and drew another one the next day. It took me 2 days for that one, and I felt it was much better than the first one. Later, I changed to another set and drew for a week, then another set and drew for half a month. The last one I painted took a month, from half a day apiece to a month apiece. The paintings looked different, and the last one was very thorough.
我现在回忆起那一段啊。
Looking back, it was a very natural process. I didn't think of drawing so-called superrealism. It just came into being one piece after another.
The golden age for the development of realistic oil painting in China was in the 1980s. At that time, a large number of excellent realistic oil paintings appeared, such as Lord John Lee's Father and Chen Dangqing Tibetan group painting. These works became the hallmark of that period.
其实中国在60、70年代，就是那个时候社会主义，现实主义的。
In fact, during the 1960s and 70s, the period of socialist realism oil painting, there were many outstanding talents and works. For example, occupation of the presidential palace, put aside the content, the composition of the painting, the design of the dramatic scene, and the subtle depiction of each character. Everything is precise. There were many such works in China at that time.
从这个政治的附属品解脱出来了。
After reform and opening up, art was freed from being subordinate to politics. At the time, it became more about the pursuit of art itself. We also made great achievements in this period. The level of realistic oil paintings in China in the 1990s was among the best in the world.
Lun uses his work to express his attitude and views towards the world. In the 1990s, he created a large number of paintings with critical themes. After the collapse of a department store in South Korea, Lun created Century Sceneries 3. In the painting, children's toys are surrounded by industrial rubble, showing the weakness and helplessness of people in an industrial society. And in Century Sceneries 4, a world map is put together on a hospital bed using syringes, scalpels and used sheets.
对我们的现代文明，对工业化，是吧？
Reflections on modern civilization, industrialization and life. This past thinking will form a result later. This result appears in the form of a concept and reveals itself in the paintings.
这个结果以你的一种观念的形式出现。
In 2004, Lun made his first female portrait named Mona Lisa, the design of smile.
以当代人的眼光，我们回头再看传统。
Looking back at the traditional in the eyes of our present generation, I chose the theme of Mona Lisa because the painting is so famous. When talking about traditional painting and portraits, the first that people think of is Mona Lisa. Nothing is more representative than it. So I chose Mona Lisa and then used my cutting-edge artistic language to paint a modern person. But the theme was from the past.
Later, the artists created a series of portraits which gained great popularity worldwide. His portrait of the face, Xiao Wen, grabbed $10 million at auction in 2015.
我的技巧和语言，油画技巧和语言，我能不能够推到一个更高的一个高度？
I want to push my painting skills to a higher level. What is the most difficult thing? To paint people, for example. Still live or rusted metals. They're not something we see every day. People deal with people the most, and people are most familiar with people. To portray people and make others believe is the hardest thing.
In the end, what makes a painting successful is the emotional expression which is based on all these fundamental things.
就一定是一个自然状态，你一定要在这个感觉当中找到一个你最爱的那个东西。
It must be a natural state. You must find something that you love the most, the thing that will best stimulate your feelings. You cannot come up with it. It must not be you thinking about something and trying to love it. That love must have a lot of hypercritical elements. It's definitely felt, and it feels like a real desire for this thing. This is the time to draw.
这个时候才是真正的你应该画了。
Since becoming famous, Lun has been given lectures and demonstrations to college students around China. Recently, he also received invitations from abroad. While relishing the chance to work with young artists, it does leave less time for his own work.
画的很少，但是脑袋里面的东西还是很多的。
I paint less, but there are still many ideas in my head. For example, if I think of a theme and don't have time to paint, then this idea will be replaced by another thought. It's like an upgrade version, and the previous one is eliminated. But I also don't have enough time to paint this upgraded version, so there comes a third version, and the second one is eliminated. So even though the artwork in my head is evolving and upgrading, it never turns into a real piece. This is the most regrettable thing.
But one thing he has made sure to hold on tight to is his Spring Festival sketching. It began when he and his friend decided to spend some time during the Spring Festival chatting and drawing, and the tradition has been going on for over 20 years. In Lun's eyes, even though oil painting was introduced from the West, China's profound culture has provided the art form with something more.
中国的油画真的是有自己的那种模式，有自己的风格。
Chinese oil painting has its own patterns and its own style because China is Asian and prominent, with thousands of years of cultural heritage. In the field of painting, we absorb from the West and accept Western skills very fast. We can quickly assimilate it into our own culture and form our own styles.
就是被自己的文化所同化。
Lun Jin grew up in Chinese traditional culture. Even though he paints oil painting and employs the seemingly Western art form, he expresses himself as the inheritance of Chinese culture. Behind the accurate and lifelike depictions, there lay his faith and ideals.